Montero. Canasta! Yan Montero!
5 years ago, this story would have been impossible. If an overseas prospect coming up through the European basketball systems would have been nice enough to be a superstar level player at 22 years old, that prospect would have just went to the league. Maybe become a drafting stash, but his sights are set on the NBA. Now we got 22-year-old Yan Montero, Dominican-born, Spanish-made. He's currently in the most unique basketball position of any player in the world right now. Because at 22 years old, before the NCAA passes their 4-year rule, the NIL is definitely changing the landscape of overseas basketball in a major way. And him being at that sweet spot, 22 years old, he can go to Duke, he can go to Kentucky, go the college route. But he's got some serious buzz from NBA franchises, despite being slightly undersized. When you're one of the best players in Europe, the NBA is gonna come calling, especially if you're not 25 yet. Then you have staying in Europe and becoming the face of the EuroLeague, which for a guy that was made in Spain, on Spanish soil, that's gonna be extremely intriguing. On today's episode of Overseas Reality, we're going to take a look at the most interesting case in basketball, Yan Montero, because this story is something that you probably never heard. From underprivileged upbringings in Santo Domingo to now on the ultimate underdog in the EuroLeague. But we'll get more into that later. But first, I just want to say thank you guys for the response I've been getting. As you can see, I'm in workout gear, right? I just finished a workout. I've been a pro basketball player for the past 9 years, and now we're switching over into media. This is what I want to do post-playing. And the number one way that you can help me pursue this at the highest level, which I truly believe that this channel can be competing with the highest channels. But the one way that you can help me is by hitting that subscribe button, because we want to continue to grow, we want to continue to scale, and that's the number one way. So now that we got the boring stuff out the way, we got the bills paid, let's skip the boring stuff and get right back to the video. Yan Montero was born in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and if you know anything about the DR, their main sports are football and baseball. So coming up as a basketball player, there's not many options for you to just excel in the game of hoops. You'd have to not only be extremely talented, but you also have to get lucky because you got to meet the right people. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of talent in the basketball world right now that came from the Dominican Republic. You're talking about guys like Cat. But a lot of the talent ends up getting spotted at a young age. Or maybe they might have an uncle that played professionally overseas, or maybe they might have an aunt that played college basketball. The connected usually wins. And I think Yan's story is something that you're going to see more. And now that the game is such a global game, right? You got dominant players coming from all over the world. And some of these places that they come from, basketball is not necessarily embedded in the DNA. Even guys like Luka, Slovenia is not necessarily known for its basketball. But when you get picked up at a young age and you get associated with clubs that are producing those kinds of players, that's when you can get put on the map. And that's what happened to Yan. At 16 years old, Yan left the DR and went to Spain, more specifically Gran Canaria, which, if you're not familiar, Gran Canaria is a club that's known for plucking guys not only from the Caribbean countries like the DR, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, but they're also known to grab guys from African countries like Kenya, South Sudan. If you look at the Gran Canaria roster right now, there's a few high major Africans that's on the roster. Maybe we'll get into them a little bit later, right? That deserves this whole other video. But I actually spoke to Yan when it comes to this topic. I asked him, what was it like for you to travel from the DR, where you're pretty much the man, right? By the time he turned 16, everybody knew him for basketball. You got your family there, you got your friends there, your whole life that you built. Just think about your life at 16 years old. I know mine. I had a whole ecosystem of just support. And we're not talking about growing up in New Jersey and going to school in Texas. We're talking about a completely different country. Same language, but still differences between the Dominican Republic Spanish and Gran Canarian Spanish. We're talking about different cultures, different climates, just a completely different environment. I asked him, what was that experience like? You know what he said? He said it was some of the toughest times he's ever had. And this is the new overseas reality, right? Typically on this channel, I talk about guys that grew up in the American system, and we grew up with the AAU basketball, high school All-Americans, and a lot of these guys that I covered on the channel were already superstars on the mainstream level before they even played a minute of college basketball. And their overseas reality was not going to the NBA, but coming overseas. But the new age overseas reality is the kids from these areas where basketball is not number one. Basketball is not even number two. You just happen to be talented and you get handpicked to come play in Spain, and you're expected to figure it all out. Now, granted, a lot of these clubs, they do have great systems in place where you come into a family type environment, right? They give you the good host family. They give you all the foods that you need, and they make sure that you don't want for anything. However, your family, man, you're just away from everything that you know to be life. And this is where the European basketball system becomes special, because if you follow this channel, you already know that I speak a lot about how they develop their players, how they structure their practices, they structure their recruitment process. Like, everything that I speak about on this channel is a decent reflection of what's actually going on there. And if you don't follow that channel, hit that subscribe button right now. But Yan was able to come into a pro lifestyle, something that would prep him at the age of 16. It prepped him for what the rest of his professional basketball career would look like. Even though that was 6 years ago, he's still benefiting from those experiences. One of the more defining moments in his basketball story is actually being benched when he first came to Spain. Now, on the surface, it looks normal, right? 16 years old, maybe 17 at the time, year 2, year 3. You're playing for an ACB club, which is the top division in Spain, and you got some vets on the team. But in reality, that's crazy, because this kid was gonna be the best player in Europe in 6 years, so you might want to give him some minutes. But he couldn't earn playing time. Yan told me that every day in practice he gave it his all. He was one of those guys that you didn't want guarding you, or you didn't want to match up with when it comes to practice, because he was gonna pick up 94 feet, he's gonna compete his butt off, and you already know he's gonna get buckets. He's the kind of guy that's gonna make you look bad in practice. But what he realized when he first came here was sometimes production in practice doesn't translate to the games. It's still very political, right? It still matters who your agent is. It still matters how much you get paid over there. You know, it still matters what's the hierarchy in the team, because situation outweighs everything when it comes to European basketball. And how did he respond to it? He said it was the toughest part of his life. He had to fight depression every day, walking into the gym knowing that he's one of the best players, not only in the gym, but probably in the league. And he would have been right in thinking that. But imagine having that self-belief. Imagine having that talent, and you're being told every day that you're not good enough to play real minutes. That was a tough pill for him to swallow. At one point, Yan decided that I had enough. I'm ready to go all the way, and I need to take a bet on myself. And he chose to go a path that I respect the hell out of him for. And I think anybody that is real and unbiased is gonna feel the same. At 18 years old, he said peace out to the European lifestyle and came to the United States to play for OTE, otherwise known as Overtime Elite. If you don't know, Overtime Elite is an alternative league for players that didn't necessarily want to go right into college, but still want to be draft eligible at some point. Is where we got players like the Thompson twins. And while it's not the highest level of basketball, it's definitely a showcase league for some of the top talent in America. Yan figured that this would put him in the best position for him to achieve his final goal, which is to make the NBA. And he balled out, showcasing his ability to not only play the Spanish system where it's just methodical, right? Point guard gives the ball to the wing and he runs to the corner. And then when they score, he turns back around on defense and plays 92 feet. Point guard's role in Europe is so minute compared to what a point guard's role is in the States. In the States, a point guard needs creativity, because not only do you have to get the team into sets, but you also have to initiate offense for yourself. You have to be a threat to score at all times. You have to be able to pull it from 30 feet out. So Yan got to dip into that bag a little bit, and he became a fan favorite. To me, I think that the Overtime Elite path for Yan was sneakily the most important piece in his story. Because even though it didn't work out, spoiler alert, didn't work out. He didn't get drafted. He didn't go there and transferred to Duke after. Like, he left OTE and came back overseas. So you can look at that as a failed experiment. But for basketball, it opened his game up and reminded him that he's not a typical European player. What happens a lot of times when guys are playing in Europe, especially at young ages, when they come over at young ages, they start to play like a local player. And it's a slippery slope, because you don't want to be perceived as a local player. However, you don't want to be perceived as a diva that doesn't fit in with what everybody's trying to do. No, that's not what I'm saying. They have a way of playing. They know what to expect from their own players. So as the import coming in, you have to always remember that if they wanted you to be doing everything that their players already do, they wouldn't be paying for you to fly in from your hometown to come hoop. Because if it was the same player, they might as well develop one of their own. So when Yan comes to OTE, he opens up the game. Now he's got the sauce. Now he's got the shake. Now he's hooping. As I mentioned before, he would enter the NBA draft, but his name didn't get called. All that sacrifice that he did, leaving home at 16, betting on himself at 18, coming to America in overtime elite, which I'm sure everybody was telling him, bro, you come to OTE and you average over 15, you put yourself on the map, you're going to get drafted. Didn't happen. These are all things that led Yan to be the player that he is today, which if you watch him play today, you know that he's one of the most fiery players. Even though he's under 6'5", his game feels like way bigger than he is. He's the kind of guard that in the closeout game, he's going to give you 4 blocks. And you're going to look at that and say, yo, where the hell did these 4 blocks come from? Like, you're playing like Dwayne Wade out there. Blocking jump shots, weak side help, and just playing harder than everybody else. But that only comes when you've been turned down and rejected at every point. At every point where you thought everything was on the up and up. I'm going to go to OTE. I'm going to get drafted. Then it doesn't happen. And now look what you have. So after the NBA draft, Yan decides, I'm going back to Europe. And he lands in Sevilla, Spain. There in Spain, like I said before, situation matters. Because in his previous Gran Canaria spot, he was just another guy. But in Sevilla, he met a coach that said, yo, listen, I want you to play your game. I'm sure playing at OTE didn't hurt his case, because when you see the things that he was able to do on that level, sure, it's very enticing to a European coach. But coach said, play your game. And that he did. After Spain, it was Andorra. There, he was able to really find his footing, because now the keys of the offense was given to him. A 20-year-old, that's still unheard of in Europe. You don't just see that happen in the top division of a country like Spain. But sometimes when you find that synergy, you find that one coach that believes in you, he can bring things out of you that you didn't even know were there. Add on the responsibility of offensive pressure, and that's what you get. So now on the return in Spain, things are on a different playing field. And these are just little pieces that add to the puzzle of what we're seeing today. Now we're here today, and he just took out Panathinaikos, which is an offensive juggernaut. Like, that is David versus Goliath, because Valencia's budget compared to Panathinaikos' budget is night and day. It's not like the NBA where you got all billionaire owners and they're all just established. You know, one owns Microsoft, one owns this insurance mega, $1 trillion company. Like, it's not like that overseas, right? But you do have pretty rich owners that is willing to put a lot of money into the club. So when you find a club like Panathinaikos, they were able to pay TJ Shorts, who was the best point guard coming into the EuroLeague this year. They were able to pay Kendrick Nunn, who's the best scorer coming into the EuroLeague this year. Nigel Hayes-Davis, the reigning finals MVP of the EuroLeague coming into this year. They're paying all these guys. Plus, you got guys like Cedi Osman. You got the Hernan Gomez, Bo Cruz, who, short story, man. He actually took that role from me. I was casted to be Bo Cruz in 2020, and everything was on the up and up until LeBron James and his Spring Hill company came in and took over the production, and they decided to go in another direction. I guess they wanted a NBA player, a real Spanish guy, but I was gonna put on my Spanish accent and act a fool. But back to the story. Now he's the face of Valencia. He's the only player in EuroLeague history that won Best Young Player and First Team All EuroLeague. Not even Luka Doncic did it. And now this is what I always say about the effects of NIL. Everybody in America talks about how NIL affects the American high school student, right? Because in high school, it's harder for you to get recruited because most colleges are looking at the transfer portal. And then it affects college because all the college kids, there's no loyalty. Guys are only signing one-year deals. But one thing that nobody's talking about is how the NIL affects the overseas market. Because overseas, now every prospect that's actually kind of good from the age of 16 to 23 at this moment now, they're all thinking the same thing. I'm just going to go to college. They paying him what? And you see some of these numbers, there's guys that don't even have the biggest name in Europe. And just because they're on EuroLeague rosters, they're getting $4 or $5 million. So it's serious money to be made, and that's something that really has to be in play for a guy like Yan Montero, because I think Montero, with all his accolades, he has the potential to be the highest paid NIL college athlete. Even look at a guy like AJ DeBonza. AJ DeBonza wasn't an established pro when he came in. He was still a 17, 18-year-old kid with a lot of potential, but also he's an AAU baby. Like, these guys, they're so egotistical. They don't even know how to handle money yet. Like, you got Yan Montero, who is a true pro's pro. Since the age of 16, he's been getting paid to play. He's been living that pro lifestyle, eating a pro diet, like doing everything that you need to do to reach those standards and reach that level of professionalism that comes with an LSU or BYU. He already embodies that, and he's been doing that since 16. To me, he is worth more than the AJ DeBonza. He is worth more than a high school AAU baby that's just coming out of nowhere. So here's the decision, and you guys let me know what you think in the comments. Does he go the NIL route, where you don't get the glory, you don't get the respect, people don't look at you like, you're going to be the next Luka Doncic because Luka didn't go to college? Do you do the NIL, but you make a lot of money, you build your brand, and that's one more year to be under the NBA's eye, in case you want to make that real league jump? Or do you make that real league jump now? 22 years old. You can argue that this is probably the youngest that he should be if he wants to go and make that NBA push. But in reality, is he going to be sticking around in the NBA? I mean, I don't know. Most guys that look like him in the NBA also have 45-inch verticals. He's not really like the most high upside athlete. So I don't know if he's thinking NBA. I mean, but he did tell me, I'm not going to leak the DMs, but he did tell me that, and these are his words specifically. He said, I want everything I can get out of this game. And when people talk like that, that typically means that you want the highest level of accolades associated with this game. Maybe it's NBA. Or, and I don't want to make this sound like a consolation prize, because in no way is this a consolation prize. You got the EuroLeague, where you're 22 years old. You're on track to be your first team all EuroLeague at 22. You're on track to be MVP, dominating the MVP conversation for years and years, because not only are you one of the better players, but you're on one of the better teams. Now, can he get poached? Yeah, I mean, in 2 years, Real Madrid or Dubai might just throw a crazy bag at him and just poach him, and where he's going to change teams. But still, he's so respected. There's no coach in the EuroLeague that's not going to give him the keys to the offense. So he can stay in EuroLeague and become the guy. You could become Vasily Micic, right? Because Vasily Micic didn't even go to the NBA until he was like 28. So you can stay and build in the EuroLeague. But now I'm going back to that DM that I got. I want everything in this game. What gives him everything in this game? It's not college. I'll tell you that right now. College, you get the money. He didn't tell me I want the money. He didn't tell me I want the money. If he told me I want the money, I would say college. I mean, he's got the EuroLeague already. That's what he has. So, I mean, I would have to say the NBA. And I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it at all. Go get your money. Go get your status, right? And if it doesn't work out in the NBA, you come back to Europe. Not saying, again, it's not a consolation prize, but you come back to Europe and you be the man. You be the GOAT. You be the Dominican GOAT in Europe. And you go sign in Real Madrid and have a legendary career in Real Madrid for 10 years. I think he tries NBA first. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you guys like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Like I said, subscribe, because we're doing this overseas reality once a week. Like I said, we always do it the other way around, but I want you guys to really see that this thing goes both ways. It's going both ways. Guys can be the man in America and then go overseas after when it don't work out in America. Or you could be overseas and be eyeing the American play, the American dream, because if a guy lives in Europe, America is his overseas, right? So that's all I got for you guys today. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Until next time, I'm Chip Overseas. Peace.